Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking Captain America the Winter Soldier. I know this movie came out about 5 days ago, but I wanted to do my review after I saw the newest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just because I knew there was going to be some very serious fallout from the movie in that show, and I thought being able to see both halves of it, shall we say, would, provide a better context to talk about the movie. Anyway, in short, though, this movie actually I think is much stronger than the original Captain America movie, simply because first movies they always have to be the origin story, and origin stories generally tend to not be the strongest story you can tell with a hero. Once you've got the hero up and running, then you can kind of really delve into their universe, their characters, and really pick and choose to bring to life the best kind of stories of those characters. And this is very much classic Captain America stuff. And that's part of the reason why it works really well. It's Captain America struggling with ideals and realities. I mean, that's really the sort of thing at the heart of most Captain America stories, because as Captain America has repeatedly said, while he often works with and for the American government, he is not he's really not an agent of a proper agent of the American government. It was really best illustrated by this back in the '60s, where basically the American government came to Captain America and said to him, "Hey, Captain America, we're ordering you to go and fight in Vietnam." And Captain America says, "Well, I'm not actually a member of the military or anything like that, and I'm an Avenger, not a government agent. You can't tell me to do that." And people in the comics back then even asked Captain America, "Well, hey, Captain America, what do you think about this whole Vietnam thing?" And Captain America's response basically boiled down to, "Well, my thoughts on this war don't matter. It's up to the people of this country to decide how we're going to deal with this whole situation. And I'm not going to step in there and fight for our fight. This is part of a war, but I will fight to preserve people's right to decide which direction our country is going to go." And that's really what Captain America is about. He fights for the ideals of America, not for, like Nick Fury. Captain America is about ideals. Nick Fury is a guy who's all about pragmatism. And this is really one of the great conflicts in like reality, ideals versus pragmatism. These are really often what are at the heart of good Captain America stories, and that conflict between ideals and pragmatism, that is often, at the central conflict in the comics about between Captain America and Nick Fury. So, and this is really on display here. Captain America is somebody who wants to operate on the basis of trust. Nick Fury is a guy who cannot operate on the basis of trust. I mean, Fury even flat out says to him, "I don't trust anybody. And, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye." Well, I think Nick is kind of blowing some smoke here. He's obviously a very suspicious person, but obviously there are people that he does trust, like the doctor who helped him fake his death. And obviously he trusts Pierce, he trusts Natasha, he trusts Maria Hill, he trusts Captain America. So I think Nick Fury in that scene was really kind of either trying a little too hard to make his case to Captain America, or was actually just flat out guilty of believing his own BS. And of course, this all comes down to bite him in the butt. But anyway, let's just sort of, what we're going to do here is really, because I don't want this review to be too awful long. I've got a lot to do today. Just going to talk briefly about the characters, and then we're going to talk about the main plot. So let's kind of talk with the smaller characters first of all. Not a huge amount to say about Maria Hill. I like to like in the like how here in the movies, even though she's had a noticeably smaller role, she seems to be portrayed in I think a more positive light than in the comics. In the comics, Maria Hill is kind of considered to be a big jerk by a lot of the superheroes, and not in a good way. I mean, somebody who's like, yeah, she might be trying to do good, but she's going to go about it in a really terrible way. Or she's basically somebody who is in a lot of ways, she's like Victoria Hand on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She's somebody who's very bound to the rules and is going to follow the rules rather than morality. And there was an awesome story during the Civil War where Maria Hill basically tried to order Captain America to do something that he said, like, hey, wait a minute, you can't tell me to do that. That's illegal. And Maria Hill says, well, I'm telling you to do it. Are you going to do it or not? And Captain America, instead of saying no, he literally jumps out the window of the helicarrier. Also, not just as a way of saying no, but also because he knew that Maria Hill would sick a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents on him if he said no. And that leads to a whole thing of S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to take down Captain America. But of course, we see a little more than a little bit of that in this episode. I mean, this movie. And this is really, of course, a really great conflict for Captain America because S.H.I.E.L.D. has been really the glue that ties all these various movies together. Captain America has been working for S.H.I.E.L.D. for quite some time now. So this really leaves the guy out in the cold. But it is in those kind of situations where Captain America really shines. There's this story in Avengers where he's talking with Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's kind of reminiscing about how he's tried to do the right thing, but people are always misinterpreting it, and how he can never really catch a break no matter how often he tries to do good. And Captain America says to him basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, when the world tells you that you're wrong but you know that you're not, what you do is you plant yourself down like a tree beside the river of truth, and you say to the world, no, you move. And that may not be the quote word for word, but it's pretty close. And that right there really sums up Captain America. Captain America is a guy whose greatest ability is to be able to stick with what is genuinely right and refuse to really compromise what is right. Now, it's not to say that Captain America never questions what is right, that he doesn't always know what the right thing to do in any situation is. But at the end of the day, Captain America will always figure out what is the right thing to do here, and then he'll go out there and do it. It may not always work out for him, but Captain America will make the right choice, and he helps other people to realize, yeah, the world is complicated, but you can see right and wrong in a situation, and you can, even in the most difficult situation, choose to do the right thing. And that's really another thing that's at the heart of any good Captain America story. And just look at his relationship with both Nick Fury and Black Widow in this. Black Widow is somebody who is just so used to this espionage game that while she does want to try and make up for her past, she's very ambivalent in so many ways about who she is. And she even says to Captain America, like, who do you want me to be? But here, by the journey she goes on with him, she realizes, like, hey, I do have some things I genuinely believe in, that I am willing to stand up for, that I'm willing to fight for. I'm not just this amorphous blob of a person who becomes whoever it is that I need to be in order to accomplish my goals. I, Natasha Romanoff, have something that really is at my core. It's also kind of cool that she has that sort of little arrow-shaped necklace as sort of a nod to her relationship with Hawkeye. But anyway, we'll talk more about Black Widow later. Anyway, now the main thing with this episode, and it is really at the heart of it, is that Captain America believes in people. He believes that people will do the right thing. And this is, of course, really at the crux of his relationship with the Winter Soldier. Is that he realizes, oh my God, it's Bucky. Yeah, like we all didn't know that going into the movie. That he has complete and utter faith in him that he will do the right thing. And that's another one of the things that is really awesome about Captain America, is that he can inspire the best in other people. And this is why Captain America works so well as a character, because Captain America is able to help other people see the potential, the good within themselves. And that Captain America fights for not the realities that we all have to live within every day, because sometimes those can be harsh, those can be unjust, those can be unfair. He fights for ideals, And ideals are things that, while they can also be flawed, are truly what it is that we want the world to be. Captain America fights for the world that as it should be, not for the world how it is. That's the main difference between him and Nick Fury and Maria Hill and Black Widow. And that's one of the reasons why he bonds so well with Sam Wilson. We'll talk about Sam a little bit more later, but Sam is a guy who goes out there, and his work at the Veterans Hospital is all about guiding people to a better life. Like, deal with their pain, but move past it, move on, live a better life. And that's why these two guys get along so well. In a way, they're both kind of idealists, while everybody else around them is a cynic or a pragmatist at best. Let's see. But yeah, it really is what I said about that whole thing where Captain America just really refuses to compromise on what he knows is right. That is at the driving heart of this movie, and that's why he's always calling out Nick Fury and Black Widow about their actions, and making them realize, like, you know what, the world isn't so as gray as you think it is. There is black and white in the world, and if you spend too much time in that gray area, you start to lose sight of that. Captain America is really great at bringing clarity to other people. And every time he turns around, every time it looks like he should maybe compromise or something like that, he doesn't. And that's what's great about him. But anyway, let's kind of move on and briefly talk about Nick Fury. And as I said, Nick Fury is really the representative of pragmatism in this episode. And there's nothing really wrong with pragmatism. Pragmatism is often very necessary in life. Pragmatism is often what keeps you alive, or at least, not out in the streets in life. But the danger of pragmatism is that it is seductive. You can ultimately justify almost anything under pragmatism. And that's where Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of come close to basically being like Hydra. And that's really is the central conflict in this movie. And I love how, and we'll talk more about that later, but basically they're like, Fury is like, I do these things not because I like to do them, but because they are necessary. This is what I need to do in order to make the world safe. Well, what Hydra is telling is, well, basically, yeah, if we do this, then the world will be safe. There will be order. There will be no more war. Of course, the price of all of that is that anybody who steps out of line will be killed. And that's not really a world that any of our heroes want. So Fury, again, his whole thing, despite what he says about having to trust people, finds himself having to trust people. And now, granted, he is fortunate enough that he can rely on people whom he already places a great deal of faith in. But still, and his shedding of that eye patch, you can see it as a symbolic way of him opening his eyes, as it were. He realizes that, in a way, that eye patch has been a blinder. He's been too focused. Sorry, the mailman's here. On how things are, that he's lost sight of his ability to help shape the world as it should be. And going out there and on his mission to go off and sort of start stamping out the remnants of Hydra, that's in a way kind of Nick Fury atoning for what it is that he's done in the past. And in a way embracing being, I guess proactive might not be the best word, but it's the one that comes to mind. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I really wanted to say about Fury this episode, and no, not really. Though I will say though, I never for a moment thought that he was going to be dead. No, you're not going to kill Samuel L. Jackson off. I mean, this ain't Star Wars, okay? He's really been another one of those things that's been the glue. Now that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s gone, he and Coulson are really what's left of the glue that holds these various movies together. So I totally expect he's going to pop up probably in the season finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to kind of give Coulson some kind of a new mission statement. But we'll talk about that more later. Now, I thought that Black Widow actually, and I was really surprised by this, by how much they did with her in this movie. Now, a lot of it is probably just sort of testing the waters to see whether or not Black Widow really could support her own movie. I mean, she was introduced in Iron Man. There, she's a supporting character. She's officially one of the Avengers, and she had plenty of nice, cool moments in Avengers. But despite it being 2014, the idea of female-led action movies is still kind of treated as a big question mark in Hollywood. And you can, like I said, you can kind of tell they're sort of feeling out the movie audience here by basically making her the co-star, much more than even the Winter Soldier, for Captain America in this movie. I mean, you really could basically call this movie Captain America and Black Widow versus Winter Soldier, guest starring the Falcon. But again, Natasha is somebody who, as I said, she's basically sees herself as somebody who can remake herself to be whatever or whoever is needed for that situation. Who she is as a person, I don't think she even really knows. And beyond that bond that she has with Hawkeye and her desire to sort of atone for her mistakes in her past life, all the people that she's killed when she was still working for the Russians, there's really not a whole lot to her. But here, being put in this situation, you really see that she kind of realizes that, yeah, I do have more to who I am and what I believe than what I previously thought. And of course, this movie also really does a nice job of fleshing out Black Widow as a character, which, frankly, I think is kind of been one of the bigger flaws in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, is that despite what they've done with Black Widow, she really hasn't emerged too strongly as a character on her own 2 feet until this movie. And I really absolutely love that line where she goes, "Look, I only pretend that I know everything." And that this was done by someone slightly smarter than me, and the whole situation there being implied that it was probably Tony Stark. But, just seeing her kind of bounce off Captain America, that's always really nice. And I'm glad that they did not decide to go down the romance angle with those two. That's kind of something that's been toyed with in some of the various other media out there. I know there was one Avengers animated movie that was set in some future where most of the heroes had been killed off, but the lead character of the next generation of Avengers was the son of Captain America and Black Widow. I can't remember what that movie was called, and I never did see it. I just knew the basic premise. But Captain America and Black Widow, they really do make a great team, and it really is. They do have a lot in common, and it's always nice to see them team up. And it's really just kind of cool, especially for somebody who remembers back in the Cold War era, seeing Russia's greatest super spy and America's greatest military superhero, or whatever you want to point it, as a team working together to take down the bad guys. I mean, it's very classic stuff. Now, since I mentioned him, let's talk briefly about Sam Wilson. Now, I really do like what they do with Sam in this movie. Obviously, he's taking a lot of cues from his counterpart in the Ultimate Comics. He has a pet bird who he has a telepathic bond with, like in the comics. But I believe that the gear that he wears is actually called in the comics the Red Wing gear, which is the name of the bird in the comics. And yes, the whole thing. It is technically established in the Marvel Universe that Sam Wilson is actually a low-level mutant with the mutant ability to telepathically communicate with birds. Of course, this is one of those things where they mentioned it like once in one comic, and it's never ever been brought up again. So anyway, but like I said, Sam's whole thing is that he's an idealist. He believes in trying to help people and trying in the world as it could be. And his nod is working at the VA helping veterans. That's a nod to the comics where he came into the scene actually as a social worker. But he's also in the comics for a long time really been portrayed as Captain America's best friend, or at the very least one of his closest friends. He's often just flat out referred to many times as being Captain America's partner for a lot of times. And they do a really nice job of establishing that bond with him and Cap. Cap really is somebody who, in some ways, is like Natasha. He doesn't really have a whole lot of close ties to people, but like Natasha has that bond with Barton. But that's really more out of a shared past. Here it's Steve and Sam really bonding as two guys who, in many ways share a very similar nature. And of course, Sam coming in from being an experienced military guy who wants to stand up and do the right thing, that's cool. And he's a really great character to show us as a perspective of, well, not exactly an everyman, because, well, most of us don't fly around on, super bird wings for the military. But he is portrayed underneath that as a very regular guy who's stepping into a world that is much more high level, more fantastic than anything he's done. And he's not exactly a stranger to some crazy stuff. But Sam really acquits himself quite admirably. And it's certainly not too crazy to think that he could be brought into the Avengers in a future movie, because Falcon is, if I remember correctly, also one of an Avenger in the comics. And, there was also a lot of talk about maybe in the third movie they might kill off an Avenger and replace him with, and Captain America is widely considered to be the forerunner because, well, they might end up replacing him with Bucky or maybe even Sam. Because in the comics, Bucky actually did take over the role of Captain America after Captain America was killed in the Death of Captain America story. But we'll talk about that more in a bit. But let's see. Yeah, I definitely got to say, like, the Falcon and his whole wings, that definitely made for some of the best action movie stuff in this entire series. And I definitely love that fight between him and Crossbones or Russo or whatever the heck that guy's name was. And yeah, let's finish rounding out. So let's finish talking about the good guys, and then we'll move on to the bad guys. And our last good guy is, of course, Sharon, aka the nurse named Kate, aka Agent 13. Now, in the comics, she's Sharon Carter, and she's the niece of Peggy Carter. She's Captain America's longtime girlfriend, and basically kind of considered Captain America's, real, genuine, one true love, quote unquote. Kind of the Jean Grey, kind of Captain America's Jean Grey, I guess you might want to call it in some circles, or whatever. Here, I was a little disappointed. She's not really they don't really do a whole awful lot with her as a character, and this really is I think the biggest part, one of the biggest signs of the biggest problem with this entire movie is that it feels like half of a story. Now, obviously, that there's going to be a lot more of this being dealt with when they do Captain America 3, which is already in the works, and that's when they're going to bring back Red Skull and all that other fun stuff. But, in any case, it just doesn't feel like Sharon was utilized very well, and that just was really disappointed. Just really disappointed me, because in the comics, Sharon is really good. I mean, she's badass. She doesn't have powers, but she's pretty much just as good as Black Widow. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I love how in this movie we actually got to see the stunner things that Black Widow has. In the comics, they're actually flat out called the Widow's Bite. I love that thing where Natasha goes, "Oh man, those really do hurt." That was great. Anyway, so let's move on to the bad guys now. Let's just start off, since I mentioned him, Crossbones. That's the name of the the Black Ops S.H.I.E.L.D. guy, who ultimately turns out to be a bad guy, leads the guys who try to kill Cap in the elevator, and fights Falcon at the end. Well, in the comics, and I love how they do make it a point to show him that he survived and his face is messed up. In the comics, he's a guy with, I believe, a messed up face who calls himself Crossbones. And there was a story where he actually succeeded while working for the Red Skull in assassinating Captain America. Now, of course, this is comics, so Cap came back, but still, it was a hell of a story. And Crossbones is generally portrayed as I understand it, I haven't read too many stories with him, as one of Captain America's more dependable, reoccurring foes. It's like one of those, basically kind of one of the upper guys in Cap's rogues gallery, besides Red Skull and Baron von Strucker, who, that was the creepy guy with the monocle at the very end of the movie. We'll talk more him in a little bit. So let's see. But again, not a huge amount of character development on his part. But I have to wonder, I really don't think he was telling the truth when he said that nothing personal to Cap when he tried to kill him. Being that he ultimately turned out to be Hydra, and there's nobody that Hydra is going to hate more than Captain America. It's like no, he totally had a mad on to kill Captain America. Let me see. Not a huge amount to say about Pierce. It was really obvious that he was going to be a bad guy, just simply because of the fact that he was this one of the guys that Nick Fury obviously trusted, played by Robert Redford. Come on, you don't bring somebody like Robert Redford in for a movie like this if they're not going to do something really, really awesome. And of course, Robert Redford, one of his best known roles was in 3 Days of the Condor, which is considered one of the all-time great political thrillers. A very famous movie from the 1970s, if you're not familiar with it. And let me see. Oh, yep. We can't forget to mention the French pirate that the Cap fights at the very beginning. Batroc. That is Batroc the Leaper. He's a character who in the comics tends to oscillate between being portrayed as basically one of the most ridiculous French stereotypes this side of Pepe Le Pew, and being portrayed as somebody, and I do like in more modern times they have sort of dialed that back quite a bit and tend to portray him as somebody who, despite dressing in a somewhat silly sort of orange and purple outfit, is a seriously badass martial artist and somebody who should be taken reasonably seriously. Maybe not very seriously, but reasonably seriously. I mean, even Wolverine has actually acknowledged that Batroc the Leaper, in terms of fighting abilities, is somebody who is not to be taken lightly. Of course, that was also in a story where Wolverine was stripped of his powers. So, anyway, but yeah, I definitely did like that take on Batroc, and it was certainly fun because, again, Batroc is one of those classic guys. He pops up a lot around the Marvel universe, but he often has fought Captain America many times. It's always fun to watch Cap beat the hell out of him. And let me see. Yeah, I kind of think that covers that. So let's kind of get quickly into the overall theme of the movie. And again, it really comes back down to the question of what would you do for security? And the directors of this movie said that a lot of this was inspired by the whole thing about the presidential kill list. And we're not going to get too political into that, but we know it exists. It's been said, and the directors even said, they talked about this in an interview I read, that basically they wanted to ask you the question is, okay, if you're willing to kill one person to do something that you think will make the world a better place, is it okay to kill 10 people to make the world a better place? Is it okay to kill 100 people, 1,000 people, 20 million people, which is what Hydra was planning to do? I mean, where do you draw the line? And that's a question that has been asked for a very long time, and the reason it's been asked for a long time is that it's not an easy question to answer. There is a line, but where is that line? And everybody's going to have a different answer for that. Hydra has a different answer. Nick Fury has a different answer. Captain America has a different answer. But there does need to be that line. There does need to be that line between being pragmatic and being evil. And that line, as best I can tell, is when the means is worse than the ends. Wait, does that even make sense? Okay, let's just leave that one to the side. Now, a lot of people I said online have been talking about Edward Snowden in this movie. No, wait, that's not true. That has nothing to do with this movie, simply because the guys who made the movie said Snowden actually happened while we were filming this movie, so it wasn't an influence on us, but it just sort of adds context to what's going on here. But anyway, there have been a lot of stories in the comics where Captain America has gone and has fought against the United States government when it has been doing wrong. There was a story I read where the government was conducting illegal medical experiments on people in order to test out technology they'd gotten captured from aliens, I think it was. And Captain America shut that down. One of the more famous Captain America stories from the 1970s, actually, he discovers that a group called the Secret Empire have, like Hydra, infiltrated the highest echelons of the American government. And when he goes and he finds out who it is, who's the head of this organization, the person is never shown. But Captain America is just like, "Oh my God, it's you!" And the person goes, "Yeah, yeah, it's me," and then takes a gun and kills themselves right in front of Captain America. And it's never stated who this person in the American government was. Although this being the time it was written in the early 1970s, it was actually sort of meant to heavily implied that it was actually Richard Nixon. And since then, in the years since, they sort of backed away from that a little bit and basically said that it was just someone very, 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 very high in the U.S. government. But that person doing that and turning out to be a bad guy was enough to shake Captain America so badly that he gave up the identity of Captain America for a while and just sort of roamed around calling himself either the Captain or Nomad. So, yeah. Speaking of which, remember, did you notice in that scene where the Hydra guys are just seconds away from firing off their evil doomsday weapon, and the guy who's in charge of leading that countdown is this kind of lanky, very gaunt British guy? Tell me you realized that was meant to be a nod to Grand Moff Tarkin and the whole destruction of Alderaan thing in Star Wars. Please tell me you picked up on that. And also, this whole thing with Hydra turning out to have heavily infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. and all this other stuff, I believe this is taken from a famous story from the comics, actually probably the second most famous Nick Fury story, called Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D., where basically Nick Fury finds out that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been heavily infiltrated by Hydra and has to go rogue in order to clean house. And then again, the same thing happened again more recently in recent years, except S.H.I.E.L.D. and bunch of the hero teams out there had been infiltrated by Skrulls, who are shape-shifting aliens. They're actually in the cinematic universes called the Chitauri, and apparently don't have those shape-shifting powers. But again, this is again sort of very tapping into some of the better-known Nick Fury stories from the comics. Oh, and of course, the whole thing of we get to see that Jasper Sitwell, who we saw in some of the extras and short stories in the various movie DVDs, guest starred on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he turns out to be a bad guy. And I totally did not expect that, simply because in the comics, Sitwell is one of the good guys. And I definitely love that moment where Sitwell mentions, Bruce Banner, like people that the S.H.I.E.L.D. that Hydra considers a threat. And of course, one of the people he says is Bruce Banner, and then he mentions Stephen Strange. Now, of course, fans of the comics all know Stephen Strange is Doctor Strange, Marvel's Sorcerer Supreme. And of course, this is a big step towards them eventually saying what basically is a big part of their stage 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is bringing in superpowers and magic. Now, we get to see superpowers at the end of this movie. But yeah, so we know Doctor Strange is out there. Hydra considers him a threat, although at this point in his life, Stephen Strange is probably nothing more than an extraordinarily talented surgeon. I think he was actually a neurosurgeon who's kind of a jerk and likes to drink a little too much. But you can sort of see him as just being guilty of being significantly enough, being kind of outspoken enough that would be enough that Hydra would take him down. Now, Doctor Strange movie is in the works. A lot of people have been saying, there's been rumors going around that they're talking to Johnny Depp about that. But then again, what role is Johnny Depp not supposedly talking with somebody about these days? But to be completely fair, Johnny Depp does have a very long-standing relationship with Disney thanks to the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. We know that he can really work mustaches and goatees. Those are some of Doctor Strange's trademarks. And honestly, you ask anybody who is familiar with the character, well, who do you think would make a good Doctor Strange? I can't imagine that most of them are not going to have Johnny Depp very, very high on their list. And especially given that Robert Downey Jr. has been very ambivalent about whether or not wants to do any more movies beyond Avengers 3. I can kind of see them wanting to bring in somebody like Johnny Depp to sort of really bring in that mega star power. Of course, the Iron Man movies are what turned Johnny Depp back into I'm sorry, Robert Downey Jr. back into a megastar, but whatever. And let me see. Yeah, it is really sad for me that despite this movie being called The Winter Soldier, I really have so very little to say about the Winter Soldier. He's really not very well defined as a character, and honestly, the most interesting stuff with his scenes are that Ed Brubaker, the writer who wrote the Winter Soldier storyline, actually has a cameo in this movie as one of the scientists who are working on Winter Soldier. You know, when they're trying to sort of snap him back from to reality, from well, not reality exactly, to re-brainwash him, I guess. So anyway, so that leaves me with nothing to really say about the second scene after the credits. Now, the first scene, okay, creepy guy with the monocle. Obviously, that's Baron von Strucker, generally portrayed often as one of the main guys behind Hydra. Just really a very classic, over-the-top comic book, evil World War II German guy who's still running around in the modern day. And then, of course, the twins are Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, which, of course, if you're familiar with the comics, they're the children of Magneto. Now, in the comics, Strucker himself has two children, twins, and they're called Fenris. And they have their own mutant powers that only really work when they touch and all this other stuff. So there's kind of the question of, well, are they going to replace Magneto being their father with Von Strucker being their father? And yeah, okay, maybe. We're going to have to wait until till Avengers 2 to exactly find out what's going to be going on there. But I was not expecting that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch cameo, and I love the fact that Whedon just flat out embraces just how over the top and almost ridiculous a character like Von Strucker is. But sometimes, as much as these movies try to bring things down to earth, sometimes you just got to run with the crazy, and I think doing that with Von Strucker was the right move. So all in all, Captain America: Winter Soldier, absolutely great as an action movie. Political thriller, not the best one I've ever seen, but it kind of does the point, especially seeing as how it's trying to work within the context of also being a superhero movie. But I don't really have anything bad to say about the acting. The story's pretty good, and and of course it has an enormous fallout on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You got to wonder how long till Coulson and Cap kind of have a conversation with each other, just because it would really be interesting to see them compare notes. Now, I really don't think we can bet on a Captain America appearance on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it wouldn't surprise me if he turns up again in Avengers 2, just because it just fits so well. Just Joss Whedon involved with both, and it's not really. This is really, I think, this and Dark World, I really think are really the two movies where so far they haven't had Coulson in them. So, but yeah, obviously, as we say, this has an enormous impact on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And yeah, just really, I like this quite a bit better than Thor: The Dark World. So this is definitely going to have to go up there in my book as one of the best Marvel movies they've done so far, and I think probably really is going to elevate Captain America as a character to a lot of people. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi, and until next time, take care and have a good one.